All right, so we've got king 2 suited. So again, this is very close between open folding and min-raising, but it should be slightly better min-raised. And again, especially in higher multipliers, it's going to be worth playing min-raising just to get a little extra folds. But again, because you'll hit, because when you hit flush draws and flushes, they'll be king high. It is a sort of very playable suited hand, despite the fact that it has no connectivity. The high card value kind of combos well with the suitedness to make when you hit draws, the draws are even better. So this is going to be strong enough just because of that. And, I mean, you're on the button, so hitting a pair of kings isn't the end of the world, even with a 2-kicker. Well, it's fine. You'll be able to probably check back and maybe get to showdown. You won't be stuck playing too big a pot because you're in button. So we get called by the small blind. So again, we need to be thinking that, small blind has a lot of fairly high card hands. Not a lot of ace high, but so when this board comes, we can actually pretty much think that, probably small blind here is sort of polarized between hitting pairs of jacks and missing. Now, when he misses, he will have a good amount of high card value. He'll have some 2-over card combos. And in general, I mean, all his hands probably have at least 1 over to the board. That being said, I think it probably is worth still c-betting here. There's still a lot of equity share to fold out. And we have a very good bluffing hand because we have a flush draw. So it probably is slightly better to c-bet here. I like to check back. It's not the end of the world to check back. You still have a lot of implied odds checking back. And, especially with reads that the small blind is capable of check raising, playing wider. It's absolutely fine to check back here as well. In a sense, you can think of it, because we do have a flush draw, we're also not folding out, like when we're ahead here, we're not folding out as much equity share. Like if he has a random hand like queen 9, you're not folding out 25% equity share because he's got two sort of few routes because the hearts are dead. So in a sense, you sort of don't need to, folds aren't as useful either. So sort of our high card value can make it okay to check back here. I think this is pretty close. I think probably I should have gone ahead and c-bet, but it's super, super close. It's not a big deal either way. And with some reads, it can be a clear check back, especially reads that your opponent's pretty crazy or, that's going to make checking back better because your implied odds on hitting are better, and c-betting worse because they're more likely to check raise you. And so we did hit our flush, and villain min bets. So this tends to be a really weak range. And so I think here it's pretty close. There's some room to raise small to try to get value out of some of the kind of low pair hands that probably don't give a lot of value otherwise. There's also room to slow play here because we do have a nutted hand that's not vulnerable to later street play, and will play well in later streets. So this is also very close. I think likely calling is maybe a little bit better. I think playing rivers against weak players with nutted hands is very good. I think a lot of players, especially in spin&goes, tend to play rivers too loose, and they'll give you a lot of value on rivers, especially with hands like 2-pair and straights and even, single pair hands. So I think probably calling is a little bit better, but there's room to raise here small for value, especially for value from 2-pair hands. And then villain checks to us. The flush came out, and so I think this is actually one of these really cool spots to go ahead and overbet shove. And the idea being that, in this spot, our opponent's range, essentially he sort of, he has a lot of flushes here. And a lot of players, again, just aren't really good at folding flushes. I mean, for some players, it's very difficult to fold a flush. There is room for him to think that, I'm bluffy. A lot of players play kind of crazy in these spin-and-goes, so he can think that maybe we're one of those crazy guys. And so I think a lot of players will call here with almost every flush. And at that point, because we get so much more value by overbet shoving compared to betting pot, it is worth it to just overbet shove, get more value the times we get called by flushes, despite the fact that we maybe lose, we maybe don't get called quite as often in total, right? I mean, essentially, if we think about it, like if we had bet 140 chips here, and we got called 50% of the time, we would be winning around 50 chips from that bet. Here, if we get called just a quarter of the time, we're winning, 100 chips from him. So we're already winning more chips. A quarter of the time, we win 400. So we're winning 100 chips from the bet. So you can get called here a quarter of the time and do just as well as if we could called half the time. So essentially, villain can call, that's twice as often that he could call and still make better, betting a bigger size better. So we shove here, and he folds. Chances are he didn't have any kind of hand there, but it is worth trying to find some of these spots where essentially villain's bluff catching range is strong enough where he can call an overbet shove, because it's a flush, or he thinks it's strong enough, and so you can get away with shoving because of that. And it will be just better value because you don't need to be called as often to make money.